Hi, this is Kris Castro, and this is the Lead Upside Down podcast, where leaders are sharing how they are leading in non-traditional ways based on Jesus's leadership style. If you have any questions, go back to the trailer episode and that should answer them. But right now, grab your favorite beverage and settle in. If you have any questions or comments, especially if something resonates with you, feel free to go to my website, begin2shift.com, and set up a coffee and conversation meeting, and we can chat about it in more detail. All right, enjoy. Hey, everybody, this is Kris Castro with the Lead Upside Down podcast. Today, I have Keisha Wright, who is a brand new connection referred by another friend of mine, and she has got a phenomenal story about leading upside down in both her work and life. And I thought it would be super fun to invite her onto the show to be able to share that with you. So, Keisha, let me officially introduce you, and then we will dig in. So Keisha Wright is a professional life coach from the Sunshine State of Florida. She has a passion for helping people become healthy so that they can thrive in their own lives. Her pain and struggle led her to open the Emotional Recovery Clinic. And as owner and director, her goal is to teach individuals to recover from the pain of trauma, toxic mindsets, and unhealthy relational patterns through individualized, centered coaching. She specializes in trauma recovery, affective awareness, and marriage regeneration. Keisha made God a promise that if he ever got her out of the living hell she was in, and she will be telling you about that, she will spend the rest of her life teaching others how to get out. And that's what she's doing. So welcome, Keisha.
Thank you, Kris. I am so excited to be here today.
Well, as we always start, there are two questions. And the first is, and just kind of a short answer, and we'll dig deeper later, is how does leading upside down, what does it look like, and how does it show up in your life and work?
Oh my gosh, I think that is just, hearing that, living life upside down is just, I think, the foundation of what I get a chance to do every single day, just in my own personal life and just in us being the hands and feet to so many hurting people. Our mission statement at Emotional Recovery Clinic is guiding hurting people to truth. And when you guide someone, that means you walk alongside them. You don't walk in front of them, but you walk alongside them. And so us living upside down really means us going back oftentimes to places in our own life that are not either fun, popular, or just they're painful places. And we expose that hurt and pain so others too can believe that there is a way out. And so that is kind of the meat and potatoes of what I do and what the ministry that God has given me, that's what we're all about.
And before we take a break, if you had any advice to give people who might want to learn to lead upside down or do it better, what would you tell them?
How to do it is get out of the boat. Take the first step. It's not erase the plan of what it looks like and just do it. And if you want to live life better, if you're already living upside down, know that upside down, you might look around, there might not be anybody living upside down with you. Remember, you're upside down. There may not supposed to have other people around you, because living upside down oftentimes means that you are doing what everyone else is not doing, but you were called to do it for a reason. Don't forget the call.
Why don't you share a little bit about how it was to lead upside down in that situation that I mentioned during your introduction? Because I don't even know the whole story. I've only heard like a sliver of it. But if you could showcase what leading upside down looks like in a very, very difficult relationship situation.
Absolutely. You know, Kris, I was a normal stay-at-home mom. I had two children. They were in private Christian schools. I could have been your neighbor. We lived in South Florida in a gated community. And I like to tell people that to let you know I wasn't living just in a bad, kind of sketchy neighborhood. And my husband traveled for work. He was a consultant. So this happened about 13 years ago. Life looked like he would fly out on a Sunday evening, Monday morning, and he'd fly back in on Thursday. And that was our life. And I enjoyed it. Antoine and I had struggles in our marriage. We'd been married about 10 years. But I mean, it was just, kind of normal stuff. It wasn't anything catastrophic. He was on the other coast of Florida, asked me and the kids if we wanted to come and hang out. It was right before school started. So it was our last week of summer. Things were great. We did. We came home. Things were normal. And I like to paint that picture because oftentimes I say my story started before I knew I had one. So I was upside down before I knew I was right side up. Okay. So I was on the phone with Antoine. He was out of town and our doorbell rang. It's 9 o'clock at night. It's the night before the first day of school. Kids are in bed. And I answered my door and there was a man standing on my porch and there was a woman standing in my driveway. I didn't understand really what was going on. And then quickly some puzzle pieces started to either fall apart or fall together, however you want to choose to look at it. And I realized that the man that was standing on my porch was actually a pimp. And the woman standing in my driveway was a prostitute that my husband had been with on the other coast. I had no idea that my husband led a double life. We were in church on Sunday. There wasn't any indication. I mean, he traveled. So I did the kind of normal things like looking at his collar. Was there perfume, lipstick? None of that existed. No text messages, no emails, any of those things. We were your normal family. And so my life fell apart. It began to crumble quickly. A couple of days later, those people hung around, took pictures of my children, and began sending text messages to Antoine, blackmailing him for money. We were immediately thrown in the best Christian counseling that we could afford at the time, 13 years ago. And we were kind of given a script of I'd go, he'd go, we'd go together. I tell people in my clinic or when I speak, it was my alone first appointment. And I tell people anytime you have a counseling appointment and they bring other people in the room, no, you're in trouble. That's not the norm. Okay. So there wasn't just the counselor there, and they'd sat down and they told me, you know what, Keisha, it is our strong recommendation because of the amount of trauma that you have endured that it is probably best if you don't make a decision for the next 6 months, a legal decision. So what did that mean? It meant that I couldn't, sell my house. I couldn't do anything legal. They couldn't make me, and they were very clear, we can't make you and Antoine stay together, but we really feel like this amount of trauma, it's not best for you. It's not, we would like to work with you and so on and so forth. And I get pushback sometimes from that. I can go back and I can look at God's hand holding me. And you would have thought that I would have been so angry. Here I found out my husband's living a double life, that he has been with prostitutes and I have no clue. And now I am being quote unquote forced to stay and I can't get a divorce tomorrow, right? But I took that as a mission, Kris. Like, put me in, coach. I can make his life a living hell for the next 6 months. I'm good. And I began to do just that. And Antoine was doing all the things. He was a part of recovery groups and he's reading books and he had to do 90 meetings in 90 days. And he's doing all of these things to work on himself. And he is getting better and I could care less. And I am not. And I remember seeing my counselor and I remember asking him questions. I would walk in and for those 45 minutes, I would pepper him with questions like, okay, how do I do this? And what do I do? And I was not necessarily getting answers. I wasn't even getting suggestions. It was just about hearing my heart. And I remember him asking, well, Keisha, how does that make you feel? And I was like, I'm still pissed. I am still pissed off now that we've got that established. I need some tools. I need something to do. Give me a homework assignment. And that's not where this particular counselor was. And I remember it was an appointment that Antoine and I were together on. So Antoine's in the room, the counselor's in the room, I'm in the room. And I remember asking the question, how long is it going to take before I begin to feel better? And I'll never forget, this counselor perked up and he looked over his little grandpa glasses and he said, I can answer that question. And I said, great. Finally, we have a question that you can answer. And he said, Keisha, it's going to take you about 3 to 5 years before you begin to feel better. And I remember it was like all the oxygen was taken out of the room. 3 to 5 years before I began to feel better. And I remember looking at this counselor and I said, Antoine doesn't have 3 to 5 years to live. And I'm not taking 3 to 5 years to get better. I could kill him. And all those notes that you have, we're going to take that to court. I'm going to go to, some people call it prison. I call it going back to college. My kids are young. They're going to go live with my mom and dad, and I'm going to get out before my children even graduate from high school. This sounds like a win to me. I'm not going to take 3 to 5 years to get better. And I would love to tell you and your listeners that I dove into God's word and I fasted and I prayed and God revealed things to me. That none of that is what happened. I was done with God. Here I am leading a Beth Moore Bible study. Daniel, I never did finish that. Okay. My kids are in private Christian school. I'm doing all the things and I felt like I had served him all of my life. And this is how he hand delivers a hooker to my door. Like, what kind of God does that? I was done. And in
Hey,
my
let me
arrogance,
interrupt you a quick
uh-huh,
second. Before we move on, I want to go back and ask you, clearly you are so engulfed in emotion and anger and pain, and it's hard to
rage.
think straight.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tell me a little bit now that you're on the other side of it. If you were to look back at yourself as a client, tell me where was leading upside down in that and why was it so difficult to flip that switch?
I believe because a lifeline wasn't thrown at me. People were willing to step in at a distance and watch. They didn't necessarily want me to drown, but no one had a lifeline and said, let me jump in with you. Let me show you. Even in showing you how, if we screw it up, I'm still here with you. And so that led me to open what you know now as Emotional Recovery Clinic.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because when you lead upside down, it's about helping the person who needs help in the way that they need help, with godly boundaries. And when you're doing it for yourself, you really do have to focus on, and this is where I want you to go because I cut you off. You really have to focus on who I am in Christ to get through it. And it sounds like at this point you want to kill your husband and you're thinking about all the things in your head, but you're recognizing there's a better path.
Absolutely.
So go ahead and take it
Not
from there.
no, not knowing how, I was arrogant and I told God, okay, if you get me out of the living hell I'm living in, I'd spend the rest of my life teaching everybody I know how to get out. And Antoine asked me, getting towards the end of our 6 months, will you go to a marriage conference with me? And I'm like, are you crazy? We're done. Like, we are done. There is no marriage conference that can fix this. And I reluctantly went and I was out of control. I mean, anybody and everybody. I told the checkout girl at Publix, the grocery store, like, let me tell you what my husband did to me. I was crazy out of control. And I remember the speaker saw me in the hall and she said, hey, Keisha, I heard your story and I heard what Antoine did to you. He ruined the first 10 years of your marriage. But if you don't learn how to deal with your hurt, pain, and bitterness, you're going to ruin the rest of your life. And she turned around and walked away. That was the first time someone threw something at me. Like, hey, you're drowning. You're going to take everybody with you. And so the next day I saw her at a coffee shop and in the back of the room and getting coffee. And I said, hey, if I believe what you just said, what does that look like? Me getting over my hurt, pain, and bitterness. She goes, I have no clue, but it's going to kill you. And I'm like, great. Her next comment was, I'll walk in life with you. I don't know how to help you, but I'll walk beside you and we'll figure it out. And that began a series of questions of asking me different things about Keisha. And I'm an avid believer, unless you deal with the pain of the past, you'll never be able to deal with the problems of the present. Time does not heal all wounds. Trauma is an injury, not a disorder. And it has to be a taught process, not a talked out process. And I believe when we live upside down, sometimes we have to say those hard things, but we also have to be willing to get deep enough in the pool so someone can see your presence, but not get close enough where they drown you and them too. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Because just like the Coast Guard, when they go and rescue people, sometimes they have to do some things to subdue the person they're trying to help because the person is thrashing around just trying to survive. So that makes
Absolutely.
absolute sense.
Absolutely. Well, we opened Emotional Recovery Clinic. I did not realize that's what I was doing, but this is a fun fact. 1 year to the day of Coco, that's who she told me her name was, my husband's prostitute, came to our house on August 7th. 1 year to the day is the first time that I knew that I had to say something in front of people. I needed to tell this story because I couldn't be bound by this shame and embarrassment, the scarlet letter that I felt like I had. And so I didn't know that's what we were doing. And now it's known as Emotional Recovery Clinic, and we teach people how to heal from hurt, pain, and trauma. It is a taught process.
So let's go back in the timeline. You
Sure.
met the person at the marriage conference. She offered to walk with you.
Yes.
How long was it from that moment until you started to feel some semblance of who you were again and started to feel like you were capable of walking in a way that honored integrity and who you were?
The first part of your question, when did I start feeling like Keisha again? Okay, this might be a hard answer for your listeners. That Keisha never came back. That Keisha needed not to ever come back. That Keisha was one that looked at life in a totally different way. And so I remember saying over and over and over again, Antoine, I just want to go back to how life was. I want to go back to how it was. And sometimes the harsh reality is when God delivered his people from Egypt, he said, build an altar. I never want you to forget where I brought you from. I had to learn how to build an altar so I would never go back to Egypt to be a slave again. And sometimes
Then
that's hard to do. So the old Keisha never came back. And the verse that God put on my heart for Emotional Recovery Clinic is, behold, I am doing a new thing. Don't you perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. And so sometimes when you live upside down, it's letting go of that old man, that old woman. And you don't know how to walk in wellness. It's new, but he will do a new thing. He is anxious to do that. And so I would say there was a lot of things, a lot of pain in my past that had to come bubbling out. And I had to start dissecting because this stage that was not that I wanted to make all about Antoine, that was the easy thing. I needed to look at the hurt and pain that Keisha had and what I brought to the table, not to quote unquote, I couldn't cause my husband to do this, right? But I had to start looking at my own hurt and pain. And I had to get Antoine off the scale, which was much harder. So, to give you about a timeline, when it took from this lady entering into my life, that was March that year. And so from March, probably June, July, I started saying, okay, I can do this. I don't know what this looks like, but I'm willing to do a new thing. I tell people all over this country, there's two things that I can't teach you. I haven't found a pastor, a psychologist, a counselor, a therapist that can teach you this. And you need both of these things in order for wellness to enter your life. Two things: belief and desire. You have to have the belief that you can live upside down and the desire to want to live upside down. See, some of us don't have that belief and desire. And if you don't have that, that's okay. I can tell you how to get it. Before your head hits a pillow tonight, ask God, give me belief and desire to do it upside down because I can't do it like this anymore. Throw the ball back to Him.
Yeah.
That's what I had to learn how to do. And I had to put that on repeat. It wasn't a one and done.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that the verse about renewing your mind is absolutely 100% true. But Jesus is a gentleman, and he's not going to come in and, reach his hand into your brain and move things around. You have to ask him for permission. Like, will you please help me? And then
Absolutely.
little by little, step by step, it happens. And I've been through a different journey with some of the similarities, but very different journey. And I know that it was hard to renew my mind, and it took time and, working through all the anger and bitterness and resentment and, forgiveness and all of those. You have to do it to lead upside
Absolutely.
down.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing about our clinic is we give you tangible tools and you check out a life for 4 days. We are walking beside you. We give you a tool. We try and we allow you to get comfortable with it over and over again. There's no clocks on the wall. So it's not a 45-minute session where you get to the, height of what you're trying to say and then you've got to reschedule. So those are the things that we have found to make it successful for people to walk in one way and walk out differently. So you were
And
right about the power of choice. For you've got to choose that it's a choice. It's not a feeling, it's a choice.
and when along the journey did you decide to save your marriage rather than let it go?
This might not be a popular answer. I have to choose that every day. It becomes more comfortable. I can go back and choose to live in that place. But what was different is I saw by walking in wellness, this is possible. Okay. Saving my marriage was never the goal. And I know that's super unpopular sometimes in the conservative church. Like, do I believe God hates divorce? Yes. But I believe God sent Jesus to die for people, not an institute of marriage. Okay. So I am not one to say you need to do this to save your marriage. You're a fool if you do that. You can't save your marriage. Okay. Your marriage, you got married at an altar. It was a sacrifice. You lost that long time ago. It is time for you to walk in wellness for yourself. And so I have to choose that every single day, just like Antoine has to choose that every day.
Yeah. And a lot of times as well, people forget that it's two individuals coming to a table with God and pledging loyalty, oath, covenant with each other, right? And those
Yes.
two individuals are uniquely individual, which
Yes,
means that the marriage is two people who become one over time, but they're still
absolutely.
two people.
Absolutely. Kris, my favorite thing to teach people is when you change, it forces the relationship to change, even if the other person chooses not to. I have women or men call me all the time, like, my husband won't go with me. My wife won't go with me. That my husband says I'm the problem. Be the problem. because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if you're 50% of the problem, you're 50% of the solution. Choose wellness, because now we can force him to deal with a woman that's well, not a woman that's wounded, and vice versa. For my men, choose wellness. You get to force your wife to deal with a man that's well, not a man that's wounded.
Yeah, and you can't control your spouse if they decide that they don't like the healthy version or the healthy dynamics. They get to choose whether or not to leave. And you
Absolutely.
absolutely must let them, because they are an individual and they have free will. And God is going to take care of it.
In our clinic, I teach the greatest gift God ever gave mankind, in my opinion, first and foremost, is his son, Jesus Christ. That's the greatest gift he gave the world. The second greatest gift is the gift of choice. Everything God created does exactly what he wants it to do, except for man. He gave man the gift of choice. And sometimes we feel imprisonment, and he gave us choice. And so he wants us to choose wellness. He's not shoving it down our throat, but he wants us to walk in wellness.
Yeah. And back to the whole marriage relationship, the power of prayer. When your spouse makes a choice to leave, or your spouse makes choices that aren't healthy, it's between you and Jesus, because the only person that can change the other person is Jesus. And it's a hard reality when you have to let the other person be free to do what they do with healthy boundaries to protect yourself, and just surrender them to Jesus and let Jesus work it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is nothing greater than going to the Father on their behalf. And, so many times I've done that, and it was almost as fix him, fix him, fix him. You need to change this in him. And I say in the clinic all the time, at my women's clinic, darling, if he ain't wearing a diaper, you can't change him. Stop trying. You can't even change yourself, much less somebody else. Right. And anytime we try and change someone else to to suit our wounds, we are choosing to play God. And so, what I have found out so many times is, as I'm going to complain to the father about Antoine, it's really me. He's winds up changing, and he gives me a different perspective. It doesn't mean he changes my view, but maybe, Keisha, maybe there's something in you I'm trying to change. And oftentimes, when I look at it with a different lens, then it allows me to see it differently. Doesn't mean I agree, but I can see it differently.
Yeah, can we switch gears a second? I want to talk about the period of your issues where your family heard what was going on, your friends heard what was going on. You are in a good space where you're trying to save your marriage, you're trying to work on you. Leading upside down often means making choices based on you and God and what's going to happen and what God is directing you to do. And sometimes people don't get it, don't understand, don't agree, and are very offended by the choices we make when we're following what God says. Can you share a story about how you led upside down in that arena with people who may not have agreed with you?
That is more often than not, just because Antoine and I are in ministry. And so I say that we make ourselves a very wide target, right? So let's talk about my family. I did not tell my family. I was completely devastated. I had been married and divorced before to a physically abusive ex-husband who wound up breaking my daughter's femur bones at 18 months old. Like I left that, and now I'm living, a normal, whatever normal is, healthy Christian marriage. And now I'm not, okay. And so I shame. The enemy almost came and put his hand over my mouth, and I could not tell my inner circle of people that loved me. It was very odd. I couldn't go to my church family. I joke around and say that's what the Baptists call unspoken prayer request, right? We have a lot of that. And we're not free to just expose the hurt, pain, and trauma in our lives. And it's because I feel like the church doesn't necessarily know how to do that well. Okay. Sometimes they turn on their wounded. And so I didn't say anything for a long time. And it wasn't until after Antoine and I went to this marriage conference that Antoine was led to, he said, Keisha, I got to tell our children what I did. And I was like, do what? Are you crazy? No. Okay. This is killing me. Why do you want to tell them? And he says, I owe them an explanation of why you're falling apart. I need to take that weight off them, and I need them to know it's not their fault. I need to own that. And I thought, okay, one more way we can throw you under the bus. That's great, you know. And he began doing that with our children. He did it with my parents. The reason Keisha's checked out of life, she's not there, is because of me and choices I have made. So Antoine took that on. And it was crazy. Yes, did people walk out of my life? Yes. But I was so engulfed in the pain, I don't even think I recognized them leaving. They didn't know how to help me. When it came to my friends, that lady that I told you about that told me that I need to deal with my hurt, pain, and bitterness, she had a big conference at a church that was going to be about 2 hours away. So I decided to invite my small group ladies class, and it wasn't going to be anything, you know, big or whatever. And it was on anxiety and depression and, you know, stress and all the things. And so we're sitting at one of those round tables like they do at, you know, big ladies conferences. And she came up to me and she said, how about giving your testimony? What? You're crazy. No, I'm not doing that. You're absolutely out of your mind. You're no. These people don't know this. Like, no, this is like our little secret. Like, right? You're walking in life with me. And she said, okay, fine. And she gets up on stage and she says, I'd like to welcome you to the stage, Keisha Wright. She's going to tell her testimony. And Kris, I about fell out of my chair. And like a fool, I began walking to the stage. Like nobody knows, like it was crazy. And I remember she met me at the end of the stage and she gave me a hug. And the last words I said is, I'm not ready. And she said, I know you're not, but he is. This is where shame dies today.
That's smart.
That was hard. I had no idea what I said. I remember obviously saying something about a prostitute. And I remember walking off of that stage, and the 6 ladies from my small group's eyes were like, oh my God. But slowly, some of them began saying, I got stuff in my life that I can't unspoken prayer request. And it began to catch on. And so I didn't volunteer to live life upside down. It's like God just turned it upside down and I kept walking. I call it obedience before understanding. And so um, that's been the new norm. And I never want to go back to that image protecting. So when Keisha's not okay, I'm okay saying, you know what? It's a hard day. Things aren't okay because I don't have to live behind that mask. Does that make sense?
Oh, that absolutely does. I would love for you to just kind of close out the podcast with whatever advice you would like to give people, because you've had a hard journey. You've
Yes.
led upside down, even when you didn't know you were leading upside down. And that's the cool thing about Jesus is he positions us with enough faith to take a step, and then he'll give us another step and another step and another step. And so,
Yes.
how do you want to wrap up the podcast in a way that you think will help the people listening so that they will choose to lead upside down in whatever circumstance they're walking in?
I believe it's a calling, and I believe that he calls all of us. The goal is to find out, how is he calling you to be hands and feet? How is he calling you to be that person of whatever caliber you're supposed to be in? Right? You got to hear the call. Ask yourself, is trauma, unresolved hurt, pain, and trauma in my life not allowing me to hear the call of living life differently? Okay. If fear enters in as you are thinking what that looks like, no, you're on the right path. Why do I say that? That it goes against all what Christian speakers and ministers. Wait, if fear enters in, know that I'm on the right path. Yes. Why? Because it's the enemy's playbook. He has to inject that. And so if he is injecting that fear, know that he must be threatened by something you're about to do. And his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. And then you have to make the decision, am I going to obey without understanding? So many times I tell people, I want the master's plan, and the master hands me the master because I am not equipped for his plans. I just have to live in Jeremiah 29:11. He knows the plans he has for me. And my job is to say, yes, Lord, here am I, send me. But there's things that block us from hearing the call. And for me, that was unresolved hurt, pain, and trauma in my life. Find someone to walk that out with you, not to just watch you walk it out.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so very much for being a guest, Keisha. I would encourage everybody, because we all have hurt, pain, and trauma, and we're all at different stages of working through it. Some of us are further ahead than others. If you have anything that you want to work on as part of your 2024 kind of improvement plan, go to Keisha's website, check out what she's got going on, potentially attend her conference in January. She's got information on the website. And definitely do not let another year go by where you are bound and hostage to the past. Work on letting it go, because that's the only way you're going to lead upside down. That's the only way you're going to be free to be who Jesus wants you to be. Right, Keisha?
Absolutely. I say wellness is your birthright. Absolutely.
Amen. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for listening to the Lead Upside Down podcast. And if you want any information, feel free to get a hold of me, get a hold of Keisha. And if you want to learn how to lead upside down, feel free to schedule a coffee and conversation. I love having those conversations. So have a great day, everybody. Take care. Lead upside down. Thanks so much for hanging out and enjoying the Lead Upside Down podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, wherever you are, you can lead upside down too, just like Jesus did. Feel free to reach out to me if you want more information or if you think I can serve you in some way. Just go to my website, begin2shift.com, and click on the coffee and conversation icon and set that meeting up. Have a fantastic rest of your day.